What's up, guys? I'm Chris, and today you're watching a magic book review on Before We Begin by Asi Wind. What is Before We Begin? Basically, in short, this is a book entirely dedicated to pre-show. I'll go over some of the contents and give you more information about this shortly here. We're just going to talk about what you get, quality first. So, what you get is a book, and the quality of it is really good. It's printed by Vanishing Ink, or released from Vanishing Ink, and all of their books are of great quality. I have a lot of Vanishing Ink books, so the quality is definitely there. All right, so pre-show. Thoughts on pre-show. Some people are against it. Some people feel like it's a form of stooging. Some people feel like it's not worth the effort or the time. I was one of those people, for a lot of reasons. I was never interested in pre-show until I saw that this book had come out, and from a familiar name. I like a lot of Asi's work, and so I thought, you know what, I'm going to pick this up because what I've heard about pre-show, I've heard mixed reviews, mixed thoughts on pre-show, but really, I don't have any in-depth knowledge of it. So what better way to educate yourself than to get a book entirely written on pre-show? So, from somebody who wasn't against pre-show, just never had an interest in performing it, this really opened my eyes and taught me a lot. So I'll just kind of briefly touch over some of the contents, just so you can get an idea of what you're going to get if you pick this up. And this book is 147 written pages. Not really any pictures. There are no pictures. Doesn't need to be. But yeah, so 147 pages. You will have. It talks about selecting targets. So that's actually extremely important. And the things that he goes over in here to kind of explain why that's important it'll definitely help you find who you want to use for pre-show. Talks about how you approach your targets and justifications to use, kind of how to go about this in as much of a casual and innocent approach as possible, because you don't want your participant feeling like they're in on this. Like it's almost like a dual reality type thing when they're up there if you did this right. So they're still going to get the benefit of the effect as it's performed later on in the show, and it's just going to make everything that much stronger to the people who aren't part of this. But for the person that is, they don't know that they're part of this if you've done this right, and there is so much in here to make sure that you do it right. Tools he talks about obtaining information, forcing different methods. Talks about wallets, billets, kind of any method that you already know to get a peek. It's covered in here. And then scripting. So your pre-show script opposed to your during show, opposed to your show script. He'll go over examples of that. So that's really good because you want to script this in a way that makes sense so that when you are kind of doing your pre-show, it seems fair, innocent, nothing set up, or it doesn't seem like you're trying to get something now to use later in the show. And then your show script, just wait, and you don't have to follow these scripts. They're just examples, and he encourages writing your own, but it's there so that when you do your pre-show and you're doing your actual show, they won't put two and two together. And it'll also enhance the overall experience for everybody there. There's a principle called camouflage here, which just talks about, how to camouflage your pre-show. Assisted pre-show, usual pre-show, and, I don't know, it's kind of hard because there's different areas in each category, right? So he goes over some different examples of, when I say unusual pre-show, it's not your standard go up to somebody, obtain some information, use it later on in the show. Like, there's so many different examples in here. So just incomplete pre-show, open pre-show, half open pre-show, candid pre-show, expandable, eavesdropping, just a whole bunch of different ways that you can go about this. And then it tells you how to prevent exposure, missing targets. There's another great thing called unchangeables. I'm not going to talk on that too much, but basically you want to be sure that when you perform your pre-show, that later on when you use it, your participant, who is your target, is not going to change their answer, change their mind. So Asi gives you a whole bunch of different ideas and examples of ways of things to use so that they won't change their mind later. And it's very simple, but this is something that I took away from the book that I will always use. And it doesn't have to be specific to pre-show by any means, but it's a very, very good principle. Talks about video and TV, virtual pre-show, and there's some more scripts. There's a brief history on pre-show, and then interviews by Max Maven, Penn Jillette, Luke Germain, final words, and an epilogue. So that's kind of the contents. I know it's fairly vague from what I could say, but a lot of this is different ways of performing pre-show, obtaining information, a lot of justification, and just ways to go about this in a casual setting. Because since there are so many different methods of obtaining information, I think it is important that he focused more on, how to talk to your participants and how to engage in conversation so that it doesn't seem like you're doing anything, right? So it's more about getting to know, like, what it's meant to look like you're just getting to know some of your the people that come to your show. Gonna skip over angles and difficulty. Actually, no, we'll talk about difficulty level, but tutorial. This is your tutorial. Difficulty level. That really just kind of generalizing things. Everything in here is extremely easy to do, right? If you know a way of obtaining information, either via peak, impression pad, whatever, that's all very easy. That's all you're doing, right? You're just doing it before your show. So difficulty, it's all easy stuff. Really, there's not many questions I can cover with this because it's a book. You're not using anything specific, but is it a worker? 100%, right? This is what you're going to learn in here is going to be used in all your working material. That's kind of the whole point of this, right? If you're putting on a show and this is pre-show, then that's work. That's something that you're doing within your magic work. So yeah, it's all working material. Who would use this? So essentially this is focused on mentalism. And I mean, I guess you could apply the term pre-show to other areas, like, right, maybe you are pocketing stuff or pickpocketing or I don't know, but this can be applied to magic in a sense, but this is focused on mentalism because rather than just setting things up, you are actually engaging with people, having conversations while obtaining information. Do I use it? I do now, right? So I started reading this book just like probably about a week before my theater show. And I actually did some of the things in here as guests were arriving to the show that I use later on in my show. So yeah, I have already used it in one show and I'm going to use this all the time just because there's some super simple things that take seconds to do and they can make your actual overall routine and effect so much stronger if you do some of the things in here. So what's the price and is it worth your money? So there was a standard edition and a deluxe edition with this. The standard edition is this. The deluxe has a different cover. It's like a black and gold foil checkered pattern, and it's signed. As far as I know, and it's limited to 300 copies, I believe. As far as I know, that's the only difference between the two. The deluxe was 150, and that one is sold out. since it was limited to 300, I don't see them putting any more of those out. So if you didn't pick those up, you can't. The standard edition here is $60. Now, is it worth your money? If you're somebody who performs and you put on shows or you are asked to do shows, see if you're, well, even if you are just a casual, like, strolling performer, you're still going to get something out of this, because pre-show isn't just limited to like a stage show or, a parlor show or a close-up show. This will work in other areas too. So, but if you are putting on kind of bigger shows, then 100% this is worth your money. It's going to make everything you do more powerful. But even, like I said, if that isn't something that you do, I still think that this is worth the money. Now, $60 on kind of one subject, 150 pages. Some people may find that maybe a little bit steep, but the book is great quality. But the information, there's so much good information in here that, like I said, I used it in my show a week after starting to read this. I haven't even gotten through the book, but I had acquired enough knowledge on pre-show where I felt comfortable using some of the methods and techniques in here to obtain the information and use it in the best way at my show. But it's also taught me a lot of different areas that I can go about my magic and mentalism to make them stronger overall. So for me, this was worth the money, I would say. Yeah, pros and cons. Let's see. Negatives. I don't know. I can't really think of anything. I'm not going to use everything in here, but I'm not going to give that a negative to the book, because there's very rarely a book where I'm going to use everything in there, or a DVD where I'm going to use everything in there. So I'm not going to say that's a negative, because probably 75% of what's in here is stuff that I can use or will use. Like, I'm not going to use, I don't do virtual shows, so virtual pre-show doesn't mean anything to me. I don't do anything for video or TV right now. So right now that doesn't apply to me, but everything prior to that I was able to learn from, and there's a lot of stuff that I'll use. So that's moving into the pros. But yeah, I think just the overall big pro for me was that before this book, I not only had no interest in pre-show because I didn't understand it, I didn't know all the benefits that you could get from pre-show, but it was also intimidating to me. Just, I don't know, because there are so many mixed thoughts on it that it was just something where I was like, I don't want anything to do with that. But honestly, reading this, it's not bad at all. Like, it's something that you're going to want to do, and you can kind of go as minimal into it as you want to, or you can do advanced pre-show. So on a spectrum, like, there's so much content in here that I think if you're interested in pre-show, or if you don't know much about it, I would definitely recommend picking this up. So with that, I'll leave a link in the description below, and I think that's everything I got to say on before we begin. So we'll see you at the next review.